There is a particular kind of person who has never been accused of anything. No one has ever called them difficult. No one has ever left a room angry because of something they said. Their name does not come up in arguments. They have spent years being described by nearly everyone who knows them with the same small word, nice, and they have accepted that word the way you accept a coat someone else picked out for you because it fit well enough, and because refusing it seemed like more trouble than wearing it. But somewhere underneath the coat, something has been keeping score. Not loudly, not consciously, just a quiet ledger of every time they swallowed a sentence that was true. Every time they laughed at something that wasn't funny. Every time they said it's fine when it was not fine and would not be fine for weeks. They are not bitter people. Bitterness requires admission. What they carry is subtler than bitterness. A low, constant fatigue that has no obvious source. The exhaustion of a person who has been performing a virtue for so long they can no longer locate the original feeling underneath it. You know when you last said yes and meant no, you probably said it recently. There is a common misunderstanding about people like this, and it is repeated so often that even they believe it. The misunderstanding is that they are gentle by nature. That kindness is simply what comes out of them. The way water comes out of a spring, unforced and inexhaustible. It is a flattering explanation. It is also in most cases false. What looks like gentleness is very often precision. The chronically nice person is not soft. They are calculating constantly at a speed that has become invisible to them. They scan a room and calculate what it will cost to disagree. They read a face and calculate whether the truth is affordable right now. They hear a request they have no capacity to fulfill and calculate in less than a second that the discomfort of saying no will outweigh the exhaustion of saying yes. And then they say yes and call it their nature. That is not kindness. That is a risk assessment that has been running so long it stopped announcing itself. Robert Greene has spent much of his work examining the social masks people construct in order to survive, gain acceptance, and navigate the hidden power dynamics of human relationships. The face you present to the world is not necessarily a lie. It is often a functional necessity, a working surface between the private self and the social world, and everyone has one. The danger begins when the role you perform stops being something you consciously use and becomes something you believe you are. When the social mask and your identity fuse so completely that removing one would feel like removing the other. Greene's work repeatedly points toward a disturbing reality about human nature. People can become so invested in the role that earns them approval that they lose contact with the motives, desires, frustrations, and ambitions underneath it. They can become competent, admired, agreeable, and yet increasingly disconnected from themselves. The nicest people you know are often the ones with the least access to themselves. Consider what it actually requires to be universally liked. It requires that no one ever encountered the parts of you they would dislike, which means those parts must be identified early, monitored constantly and kept out of view, which means a significant portion of your psychological energy is spent not on living but on surveillance of your own interior, watching for anything that might surface and cause a problem. You have been your own security guard for most of your life. And the thing about a guard is that he does not distinguish between a thief and a guest. He stops everything at the door. So the anger got stopped, but so did the ambition. So did the preference, the appetite, the strange original opinion, the desire that had no socially acceptable shape. All of it turned away at the same checkpoint by the same reflex for the same reason. Something was being protected. It just wasn't you. What was being protected was the relationship. Always the relationship, not the specific one in front of you, but the general condition of being in relationships at all. The guarantee that people would remain available to you, that no one would withdraw, that the room would stay warm, and that guarantee was purchased. You just never saw the invoice because you paid it in currency no one else could see. Watch yourself for a week, and you will start to notice the mechanics. They are almost mechanical, which is the disturbing part. Someone asks you for something and you feel a small physical event before you have any thought about it at all. a tightening somewhere in the chest or the stomach, a flicker of something that is not quite dread. Then the thought arrives, already shaped, already agreeable, and then the mouth produces a sentence that the body never authorized. The body knew first. It always knows first. You just stopped consulting it years ago because its answers were inconvenient. There is a specific tell that gives this away, and once you see it in yourself, you will see it everywhere. It is the apology that precedes a normal request. Sorry, could I just... Sorry to bother you. Sorry, is this a bad time? You are apologizing for the act of existing in someone's field of attention, which means that somewhere, at some point you learned that occupying attention required a fee. Another tell is the speed of your agreement, not the agreement itself. The speed. Genuine consent has a small pause in it, the fractional delay of a person actually consulting themselves. Compliance has no pause. It arrives instantly because nothing was consulted. You have been fluent in a language you never chose to learn. Then there is the more elaborate machinery. The over-explanation, where a simple no gets buried under 3 paragraphs of justification, as though the refusal needs a legal defense before it can stand. The preemptive softening, where you insert phrases like just and maybe and I could be wrong into sentences you are entirely certain about. Filing down the edges of your own perception before anyone can cut themselves on it. The humor deployed as a pressure valve so that anything true can be said and immediately made retractable. The habit of asking a question when what you have is a statement. Each of these seems trivial in isolation. That is precisely why they survive. No single instance of self-erasure is large enough to justify examining, and so the examination never happens, and the pattern accumulates for decades in increments too small to notice the way. Sediment builds a delta. What you are looking at when you finally look is not a personality. It is a defense system that outlived the threat it was built for. Because here is the part that takes the longest to accept. This system was intelligent. It was not weakness and it was not cowardice. Somewhere in your early environment, there was a real cost to being fully yourself. And a child who has no power and no exit does the only thing available. It adapts. It studies the emotional weather of the adults it depends on. And it learns to become something that does not generate storms. That is not a failure of character. That is a small person solving an unsolvable problem with the only tool they have, which is themselves. Robert Greene repeatedly examines this fundamental feature of human nature. People learn early to read the emotional and social environment around them, then shape their behavior according to what brings acceptance and what creates danger. We become extraordinarily skilled at detecting reactions, adjusting our presentation, concealing impulses, and playing the role that gives us the greatest sense of security. The problem is not that you learn to adapt. Adaptability is one of the most powerful human survival skills. The problem begins when a strategy created for one environment becomes an unconscious rule for every environment that follows. The adaptation worked. That is why it never got revised. The problem with strategies that work is that they never come up for review. A strategy that failed would have been abandoned in adolescence. Yours succeeded. It kept the peace. It earned affection. It made you the reliable one, the easy one, the one who never caused trouble. And so it was reinforced every year by evidence, and it hardened. And eventually it stopped being something you did and became something you were. You were rewarded into this shape. Nobody forced you. That would have been easier to see and easier to resent. What happened instead is that every act of self-suppression was met with warmth, and every act of self-assertion was met with a fractional cooling. And over 10,000 small repetitions, the shape was set. Then one day you noticed you were tired in a way that sleeping did not fix. That tiredness is not depletion. It is the cost of the maintenance. Now widen the lens, because the pattern you are looking at has never lived inside one person. It lives in the space between people, and it requires a partner. Every relationship you are in has a set of terms. Almost none of those terms were negotiated out loud. They were established early, usually in the first few weeks through a series of small exchanges that nobody registered as significant, and then they hardened into something with the force of law. Who calls first? Whose schedule bends? Whose bad mood gets accommodated? And whose gets managed privately so it does not inconvenience anyone? These agreements are invisible precisely because they were never spoken. And things that are never spoken are very difficult to revise. You did not sign a contract. You just kept behaving in a way that made one unnecessary. Consider what your niceness has actually taught the people around you, not what you intended to teach them. What they have empirically learned from years of consistent data about how you respond to pressure. They have learned that your no is soft and can be pushed. They have learned that your discomfort will not be expressed, which means it does not have to be considered. They have learned that if they wait long enough in silence, you will be the one who fills it, apologizes for it, resolves it. They are not villains for learning this. They are pattern recognition machines like everyone else, and you gave them a very clean pattern. People do not treat you badly because they misread you. They treat you exactly as you have trained them to. Robert Greene's work repeatedly returns to a difficult principle of human behavior. People study what you tolerate more carefully. Then they listen to what you claim to value. Every interaction quietly teaches others where your limits are, how much resistance they should expect, and what it costs to push beyond your boundaries. Power in relationships is rarely established through one dramatic confrontation. It develops through repetition. A concession becomes an expectation becomes a pattern, and eventually the pattern becomes an unwritten rule. If you continually sacrifice your own position to preserve harmony, people may stop experiencing your sacrifice as generosity. They begin experiencing it as the natural order of the relationship. There is a particular role that gets assigned to the accommodating person in any group, and it is worth naming, precisely because it looks like a compliment from the outside. You become the stable element, the one who is fine, the one whose state does not need checking because it never varies. And because your state never varies, it eventually stops being noticed at all, which is a strange kind of disappearance. You are present in every gathering and absent from everyone's model of what is happening in the room. They are not ignoring you. They have simply concluded from your evidence that you require nothing. Greene understood that groups develop their own hidden hierarchies, roles, expectations, and emotional economies. People rarely announce these roles directly. Instead, they emerge through behavior. Someone becomes the dominant voice. Someone becomes the difficult one. Someone becomes the person everyone protects. Someone becomes the person everyone depends on. And someone becomes the person expected to absorb tension without creating any of their own. These roles survive because everyone unconsciously benefits from their predictability. The most agreeable member often becomes the easiest place for discomfort to land. You've been storing other people's discomfort for years and calling it maturity. Watch what happens in a room when tension rises. There is a half second where everyone's nervous system runs the same calculation, and then you speak. A joke, a redirection, a small concession that dissolves the pressure. You have done this so many times that it feels like temperament. It is not temperament. It is a job unpaid and unacknowledged that you took on before you were old enough to refuse it, and the people you did it for have no idea it was work. That is the specific loneliness of the accommodating person, and it has almost nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who like you enormously and know almost nothing about you. They are not being negligent. They are responding accurately to what you presented. You built a version of yourself that generated no questions, and then you spent years quietly hurt that nobody asked any. You wanted to be known by people you never let close enough to know you. There is a resentment that grows in this soil, and it is a very particular strain. It is not hot. It never becomes an argument. It appears instead as a small internal ledger that you consult in private, an accounting of everything you have given that was never returned. Everything you noticed that nobody noticed about you. You have been sending invoices to people who never saw the bill arrive, and you have never once in all these years considered the possibility that they were never sent because you did not want to be asked. That is the sentence most people cannot say out loud about themselves. So read it slowly. You did not want to be asked. You wanted to be discovered without ever having to risk the request. There is a difference between the two, and the difference is where a significant portion of your suffering has been manufactured. Asking is exposure. Asking creates the possibility of refusal, and refusal would confirm the oldest thing you believe about yourself, which is that your needs are excessive and that people would rather you didn't have them. So you built a system in which you would be given things without ever having to ask. And when the system failed, as it always failed, you experienced it as evidence rather than as design. This is the first uncomfortable turn, and there are several. Your niceness has been doing something for you. Not only costing you doing something for you, it has been buying a kind of insurance, and insurance is never free. And the fact that you have been paying premiums for 30 years does not change what you were buying. Look at what you get. You get moral position. The person who never causes conflict is always the person who was wrong structurally in every dispute they are ever involved in. You never have to examine your own contribution to a broken relationship because you never contributed anything visible. Your hands stay clean permanently, and clean hands are worth a great deal to someone who is terrified of being at fault. You get to be the one who was misunderstood, which is a far more comfortable place to live than the one who was unclear. Robert Greene's work repeatedly asks us to look beneath appearances and examine what a behavior actually gives the person performing it. Human beings rarely act from one pure motive. Beneath generosity, there can be a desire for influence. Beneath humility, there can be a hunger for approval. Beneath avoidance, there can be a strategy for maintaining control. And beneath chronic niceness, there can be a hidden bargain. If I never create conflict, I never have to risk discovering what happens. When I openly demand something for myself, the behavior may look entirely selfless from the outside while quietly protecting the person from rejection, exposure, and loss of control. You get most valuably the avoidance of a specific piece of information. If you never assert a real preference, no one can reject it. If you never let anyone see what you actually want, no one can decline to give it to you. The accommodating person is not just protecting others from their edges. They are protecting themselves from ever finding out what they are worth to people who know what they are. Being liked for a mask is safe because if the affection fails, it was never yours to lose. There is something worth noticing here which Robert Greene's analysis of human nature makes difficult to ignore. Emotions and impulses that people refuse to acknowledge do not simply disappear. They find indirect forms of expression. Resentment leaks into behavior. Aggression becomes disguised. Hostility appears beneath gestures that remain socially acceptable. And because the person can still tell themselves they are being good, helpful, or reasonable, the behavior becomes extremely difficult to confront. You know these forms, everyone does. The help offered slightly too visibly. The favor that gets mentioned once casually months later. The withdrawal that is never announced so it cannot be discussed. The silence held just long enough to be felt, but not long enough to be named. The advice given in a tone that carries a small blade inside it. The forgiveness extended so generously that it functions as an accusation. The nicest people in your life have hurt you in ways you could never point to, and you have done the same, and neither party could ever prove it. What you refuse to acknowledge does not stay harmless simply because it remains hidden. Your anger did not disappear when you refused to feel it. It simply lost its address and started arriving anonymously. And there is a cost to that, beyond the harm it does to others. An anger you will not acknowledge is an anger you cannot aim, which means it goes where anger goes. When it has no external target, inward, the critical voice that runs commentary on everything you do. The one you experience as honest self-assessment is not honesty. It is your aggression turned around, given the only target that never generates conflict, working with all the precision. It was never allowed to use on the people who earned it. You have been the safest place to put it. That is the arrangement. You keep the peace outside by holding the war inside. And you have called this being a good person for so long that the word good has become almost unusable. Ask what it has actually purchased. It has purchased a life you can describe accurately and cannot quite feel. Now go further down, because the ledger and the sideways anger are not the bottom of this. They are the visible layer. Underneath is a question most people manage to avoid for an entire lifetime. And it is not a question about behavior at all. It is a question about what you have been storing. Turn the lens directly. Somewhere in you there is a container holding everything that was refused at the door. And you have assumed for years that opening it would release something monstrous. That is why you never open it. You believe that if you stopped being nice, what would come out is cruelty, because you have privately suspected since childhood that cruelty is what you actually are and niceness is the lid you keep on it. That belief is almost universal among agreeable people. It is also in nearly every case wrong. Open it and you do not find a monster. You find a person with preferences. This is the discovery that disorients people who do this work. And it disorients them because they prepared for the wrong thing. They braced for rage and found appetite. They braced for selfishness and found taste and opinion, direction, the ordinary equipment of a self that knows what it likes. What was buried was not your capacity for harm. What was buried was your capacity to want things in your own name and not apologize for the wanting. Robert Greene's work on human nature repeatedly returns to the parts of ourselves we prefer not to acknowledge. We construct an idealized image of who we are: kind, reasonable, generous, controlled, and then push whatever contradicts that image out of conscious view. But those hidden impulses are not necessarily evil. Buried alongside anger and aggression are ambition, assertiveness, independence, desire, competitiveness, confidence, and the willingness to say no. The qualities you learn to fear in yourself may contain precisely the strength you need. The problem is not that these forces exist. The problem is allowing them to operate unconsciously because you refuse to admit that they belong to you. For the person conditioned into agreeableness, much of the exiled material is the good material, the refusal that would have saved you years, the ambition you called arrogance in yourself and then quietly punished, the certainty you softened into a question mark before anyone else could challenge it, the preference for one person over another, which you buried because favoring anyone felt like an act of violence against everyone else, the desire that had no acceptable shape and so was never given one. You are not protecting the world from your darkness. You are protecting yourself from your definition, because that is what a preference is. Every genuine want is an act of self-definition, a declaration that you are this and not that, and a person who is this and not that can be disliked for specific reasons, rather than liked for general ones. Vagueness is universally acceptable. That is its entire function. You made yourself vague so that no one could locate you well enough to reject you. And it worked. And the cost is that you cannot locate yourself either. You do not know what you want because knowing would require being someone in particular. And this is where the frame rotates. And once it rotates, it does not go back. Everything you have called kindness needs re-examination under different light. And some of it will survive that examination and some will not. The generosity that left you depleted was not generosity. Generosity has a source that remains intact. What you were doing was closer to payment. The patience you extended to people who repeatedly cost you was not patience. Patience is a choice made from a position of options. What you had was the absence of a refusal mechanism, which is not virtue. It is a missing part. The peace you kept in rooms full of dysfunction was not peacemaking. It was the maintenance of a system that required someone to absorb its contradictions. And you volunteered, and the system's survival was purchased with your interior. And the hardest one, the people you have protected from your honesty, were not being spared. They were being underestimated. Every time you decided someone could not handle the truth from you, you made a private judgment about their strength and never told them you had made it. You have been managing adults like weather. That is not respect. It is the opposite of respect, wearing respect's clothing. None of this makes you a fraud. It makes you someone who has been running an old solution long after the problem changed, which is the most ordinary human condition there is. But you cannot unsee it now. And there is no clean way through, which is the part almost nobody tells you in advance. The day you stop being nice is not a day. It is not a decision, not a threshold you cross with your jaw set, not a morning where you wake up and finally speak. Anyone who describes it that way has not been through it. What actually happens is slower and considerably less dignified. You say one true thing in a room that expected the usual thing, and the temperature drops half a degree, and you spend the next 4 days composing an apology you will eventually send. The old system does not resign. It defends itself. It will use your best qualities against you, and it will be persuasive because it is you. It will call your honesty cruelty. It will point at the person's face and tell you, "Look what you did." It will produce a wave of guilt so precise and so immediate that you will mistake it for conscience. That guilt is not a moral signal. It is an alarm installed by a system that is losing its function, and it does not distinguish between harming someone and disappointing them. You will feel like a bad person exactly at the moment you stop being a useful one, and people will confirm it. Robert Greene's work repeatedly reveals what happens when an established power dynamic begins to change. People become accustomed to the version of you that serves a particular function in their lives. If you are always available, availability becomes expected. If you always compromise, compromise becomes your assigned role. If you rarely resist, your lack of resistance becomes part of the relationship itself. The moment you change that pattern, people do not necessarily experience it as growth. They experience it as loss. Something they once received easily now has a cost. And human beings rarely welcome the sudden loss of an advantage they had stopped noticing was an advantage. That is the part you should prepare for, because it will arrive dressed as feedback. You have changed. You used to be so easy to talk to. You have become cold, distant, harder to reach. Some of them will mean it kindly. They will be reporting an accurate observation, which is that the arrangement they had with you has stopped functioning. And they will attribute the failure to your character, because the alternative is examining the arrangement. Very few of them will say what is actually true, which is that you used to be less expensive. The relationships that end here rarely end, they thin. The invitations reduce by one and then another. The warmth cools by degrees, small enough that you can talk yourself out of noticing for months, and then you look up and there is distance, and you will search backward through your behavior for the moment. You did something wrong, and you will not find it because there is nothing there. You did not lose them by becoming worse. You lost them by becoming legible. What replaces the old arrangement is not confidence. That word belongs to a different genre. What replaces it is something quieter and considerably less satisfying. A small delay before you answer, a half second where a question actually reaches you before your mouth, produces the reflex. That pause is the entire achievement. Everything else follows from it. And it is so unremarkable from the outside that no one will ever notice it happened. Inside, it is the difference between a life and a performance of one. There is a version of this that fails, and it fails in a predictable direction. The person who has been agreeable for 30 years finds the buried anger, and the anger is enormous, and they mistake its size for its authority. They become sharp with everyone permanently, and they call it boundaries. They are not free. They have simply moved into the opposite room of the same house, still organizing their entire personality around what other people might do to them. The opposite of a mask is not another mask. It is a face, which is harder because a face can be seen. Robert Greene's work on self-mastery points toward the same difficult task. Learning to recognize the forces that shape your behavior instead of remaining unconsciously controlled by them. It is not about becoming permanently hard, dominant, or confrontational. It is about seeing your patterns clearly enough that you can choose your response instead of automatically performing the role that once kept you safe. It is the ongoing, unglamorous labor of noticing which of your reflexes are yours and which were handed to you by people who needed you to be a certain shape. Most of what you call your personality was installed by people who are no longer in the room, and you will spend the rest of your life quietly separating the two, and you will never finish, and you will get it wrong regularly. Some days the old reflex will win, and you will hear yourself agreeing before you have consulted anything. The difference is not that this stops. The difference is that there is now a witness, and a reflex that is observed can no longer pass itself off as your nature, which leaves the last thing, and it is not comfortable. Everyone who has ever loved you has loved the arrangement to some degree, not because they were using you, because you offered it consistently for years, and people accept what is offered. So when you stop, you will find out which affections were attached to the arrangement and which were attached to you. And there is no way to find this out safely, and no way to find it out in advance. Most people never take the test. They keep the coat and stay warm and are never quite known. Robert Greene's work forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality about human nature. Relationships are shaped not only by affection, loyalty, or good intentions, but also by patterns of value, expectation, advantage, and behavior. People become accustomed to what you consistently provide. They form expectations around the role you repeatedly play. And when that role changes, the relationship itself is forced to reveal what was holding it together. This does not mean everyone around you was manipulating you. It means human beings naturally adapt to the patterns they are given. When you change the pattern, you finally get to see what remains without it. You will not be able to do that anymore. That is the actual cost of seeing this, and nobody mentions it. You cannot go back to being unaware that you are performing. You can still perform. You will often, but the performance will no longer feel like a personality, and the applause will no longer reach you the same way. And there is a specific loneliness in receiving affection you can no longer fully accept. Because once you understand that some of the approval you received belonged to the role you played, approval itself begins to feel different. You start asking a question you once avoided. Would they still choose me if I stopped making myself so easy to choose? The people who never examine this are not weaker than you. They are simply still comfortable. And comfort is not a moral failure. It is only expensive in a currency they have not yet been asked to count. The real transformation is not becoming colder. It is not learning to dominate people. It is not refusing everyone, distrusting everyone, or turning every relationship into a struggle for power. It is learning to see human nature clearly enough that you no longer need to disappear inside your relationships to keep them. Robert Greene's deeper lesson is not simply that you must understand other people's motives. You must become equally ruthless in understanding your own. The need for approval, the fear of rejection, the resentment you refuse to admit, the role you perform, and the hidden bargains you make for affection all become forms of control. When they remain unconscious, the moment you can see them, they begin to lose their power over you. You do not need to stop being kind. You need to stop using kindness as protection. You do not need to become difficult. You need to become capable of disagreement. You do not need to stop helping people. You need to know when helping is a choice and when it is payment for acceptance. And you do not need everyone to understand the person you become. You need to become clear enough about yourself that their misunderstanding no longer determines who you are. If this video made you recognize a pattern in yourself that you had never been able to name before, don't ignore that recognition. Pay attention to the next moment when your mouth is about to say yes while something inside you is saying no. Notice the pause. That small pause may be where your real power begins. If you want more deep psychological lessons inspired by Robert Greene on human nature, power, self-mastery, hidden motives, and relationships, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, the goal is not to become someone people fear. It is to become someone who no longer has to abandon themselves in order to be accepted.